This boy, by chance, discovered that if he concentrated and stared at someone he could see their ability stats, even their talents. He realized that the soldier in front of him had the talent to be an engineer. Determined, George decided to have the soldier switch classes to become an archer. The soldier, initially reluctant to change, was swayed by George's position as the young master, as well as George's cute, pleading look. What the soldier didn't expect was that even though it was his first time using a bow, he hit the bullseye with perfect accuracy. Everyone was stunned. No matter how many arrows he shot, everyone hit the bullseye. With all the praise from the crowd, the soldier agreed to follow George's suggestion and became an archer. When George's father learned about this, he encouraged George to keep training. This instinct for spotting talent was an essential skill for any noble lord. However, George's talent wasn't based on mere instinct. He had been gifted with an identification skill by a god. He could easily identify his father's abilities, too. Soon after discovering his own abilities, George found the most powerful man who would follow him for life, right on the street. But George wasn't originally from this world. In his past life, he was just a regular office worker on Earth. He worked long hours, even staying up late to play video games. One day, just as he was heading to work, he suddenly collapsed and died at his doorstep. When he woke up again, he had become the young master of a noble family. Now, at 3 years old, George had a rough understanding of the world. His family, the Robin family, was part of the Empire's aristocracy. However, George soon realized something troubling. His future would not be easy. The Empire's long-standing corrupt government had led to farmer uprisings across the land, but the Empire did nothing to stop it. The nobles were forced to take matters into their own hands, but George had a premonition. If things continued like this, a massive war would soon break out. To protect his family and himself, George, as the future lord, would need to have his own army. And since he had the identification skill from birth, he decided to start recruiting talent immediately. He would build his army and prepare for future wars. So, George went to the town that very day, planning to use his identification skill to find people with combat talent. He searched for a while on the streets, but found nothing. Just as his eyes were aching from overusing his skill, a teenager was pushed out of a nearby restaurant. This boy was from the Malgar tribe, a group despised by the Empire's people, usually sold as the lowest kind of slaves. Seeing the boy's pitiful state, George kindly handed him a loaf of bread. At that moment, his identification skill activated on its own, and George realized that the boy was an exceptional talent, with top-tier stats and several A-level skills and professions. George was shocked by the boy's potential. He could see that this boy would grow into a great leader in the future. But after eating, the boy stood up and left. George, unwilling to let such a talented person slip away, quickly followed and asked loudly if the boy would be his vassal. The boy thought George was just playing a game, but when George showed his family crest, the boy realized it was serious. However, to the boy, he was just a worthless Malgar. The boy turned and walked away. But George didn't give up. He knew if he missed this opportunity, he might never find someone like him again. So, George decided to tempt him with food. The boy, named Lids, was eventually brought back to George's house. Even the household servants had deep-seated prejudice against the Malgar people, something Lids had long grown used to. But he was surprised when this young master, who invited him to be his vassal, not only brought his own meal to Lids but also firmly told the servants that Lids was his most important vassal. When George's father found out, he immediately rejected the idea. But after George continued to plead, and after witnessing Lids' talent, George's father decided to give him a chance. Lids would have to face George in a mock battle. If Lids could land a single hit on him, George would allow him to become a low-ranking soldier. Lids didn't understand why George was so determined to have him as a vassal, but George firmly said that he needed Lids. For the first time, someone needed him, and Lids was deeply moved. He decided to give his all to stay by George's side.